Us retro gaming YouTuber types take for granted just how strange the Game Boy Advance was as a platform. We just kind of take it in stride, though it's this weird mishmash of forward-thinking 90s tech, horribly compressed video and audio. Some people simplify it as a portable Super Nintendo facsimile, but aside from both being primarily 2D Nintendo systems, if you really dig in, the game libraries are almost nothing alike, aside from the Super Nintendo ports and Legacy series that carried over or whatever. It could do 3D, but wasn't necessarily a strength. It was widescreen, but not by our modern standards of 16:9. This video is presented in 15:10 or 3:2, matching the Game Boy Advance. Before the SP, you were stuck with this horrible screen that is at least 5 times harder to see than you remember, resulting in developers blowing up their game's color palettes to compensate. Its sound chip, from what I understand, was this hodgepodge of the original Game Boys mixed with some added channels for sampling. And sampling is really the key word when you talk about the Game Boy Advance, not just with audio, but with everything. Donkey Kong Country was state-of-the-art in 1994 because it used CG to create these pre-rendered sprites. In the 7 years between its release and the Game Boy Advance, glance at any licensed trash on this platform, and you'll find the Donkey Kong Country technique used in abundance. Over that time, developers got drunk on CD-ROMs, early 2000s computing power. The industry standard went from 4 megabyte cartridges on the Super Nintendo to 700 megs on a disc, and if somehow your game didn't fit on that, CDs were so cheap to manufacture that you could just add a second disc or a third disc or a fourth even if your game needed it. GD-ROMs, then DVDs pushed these limits even higher. But now with the Game Boy Advance, we're going back to 8 megs. Instead of painstakingly animating sprites, turning the clock back a decade, and reverting to their old tricks to conserve storage, developers would just compress the hell out of whatever media they had to make it fit on here. On a PlayStation game, you could add a video file no problem, but on the Game Boy Advance, well... It finally brings us to Dragon Ball Z, which, when represented on the Super Nintendo, and on Game Boy Advance, yeah. The original Legacy of Goku is one of the worst RPGs I have ever played. And if you're a regular viewer, you know there's some stiff competition. It fails at almost everything a game should be. Though if you ask me, and the act of clicking on this video means that you are, in fact, metaphorically asking me, its largest problem, when boiled down, is simply that it feels stiff to control. There's no running. Goku just sort of moves at one set slow speed. Attacks often miss because unlike most games, the area where you can hit an enemy is smaller than the sprite representing them. Most games cheat by making hitboxes larger, but Legacy of Goku, for some reason, decided to do the opposite. When you do land a hit, aside from blinking red, enemies don't respond to your attacks whatsoever. Like right now, it doesn't feel like Goku is actually punching this dog. Something's missing. I honestly believe that if Goku felt slightly better to control, history would have revered Legacy of Goku 1, the original, as a solid start to a nice little trilogy. Sure, it has other issues, such as how when Raditz kidnaps Gohan, you would think that Goku would fly directly to their location. Nimbus is the fastest way to fly, as he says. You get a classic compressed still screenshot from the show. Then he flew back to his house, where he will then walk through a forest picking flowers, rescuing lost cats, and escorting little girls back to their village, then jobbing out to stray dogs. That will never not be hilarious. How lame is it that in a Dragon Ball game, your primary obstacles are things like dogs, snakes, the spirits of dead people in the Home for Infinite Losers? It's one thing to put these lame enemies or quests that don't exist in the show to pad out your anime game, but it's the placement that irks me. Shouldn't walking around through the forest be at the beginning, as in before Raditz shows up? Think about it, starting the game at Goku's house, going on little adventures before visiting Master Roshi and having his son kidnapped. Isn't there supposed to be a sense of urgency here? Why is Goku picking flowers? Then when you get there, everyone's just chilling out like normal NPCs in any other game, like you just walked into a town or something. Not a care in the world. You want to see Goku go Super Saiyan? Yeah, this game sucks. But I'm not exactly breaking new ground here. Everyone knows that 1 is bad, 2 is good, and then people may or may not even remember that 3 exists because for some reason they named it Buu's Fury instead of Legacy of Goku 3, a decision that I would bet cost themselves at least $500,000 in sales. It's like they got it backward. After Legacy of Goku 1, you would think that they would want as much distance from it as possible, but after redeeming the Legacy of Goku name with 2, I guess it makes perfect sense that they wanted to rebrand and not capitalize on that game's good word of mouth. What fascinates me about this trilogy is how the same developers, with the same general approach, were able to turn this around so quickly. It wasn't gradual, this was a true strikeout followed by 2 home runs. And it's apparent from the opening scene in 2. Let's just start a new game here. 16 years from the present day. Already the text box looks way better. You can move it around with L and R if you're so inclined. 2 androids with strength beyond comprehension appeared from out of nowhere. One by one, the heroes of Earth were destroyed. It is the beginning of a new era on Earth. An era of darkness. Look at this. All you have are 2 silhouettes on some fire and some text boxes. And it's already better. It's already accomplishing more than a shitty compressed video file. This isn't fair, Gohan. Why are the androids doing this? All those innocent people. Is this the way life is supposed to be? Look at how dramatic this text is compared to just the first game. It's also really good because it contextualizes a tutorial in like a master teaching scenario. Like Gohan's supposed to be teaching me how to play the game. So already this feels so much better. You can move in diagonals. Like the sound effect when you shoot an energy blast. This is already the attack animation, the sound effects. If you experiment enough, the game hasn't told you yet, but you can run if you double tap. Already, this game feels way better. So not only is it a gameplay tutorial, it's almost like a story tutorial. If you remember in Legacy of Goku 1, the entire story takes place from the perspective of Goku. But here, we're starting the game. You're not Goku. You're not even his son. You're some character that we haven't met yet named Trunks. We know from the opening little thing that these 2 androids are risky business. We've already got a sweet little story moment right here where Trunks wants to fight, but Gohan doesn't think he's ready, so bam. Saving you for another day. Fade to black. And we know time has elapsed now because it's dark, it's raining. There's nothing revolutionary in this intro, but compared to Legacy of Goku 1, this is all such a substantial improvement for just selling the emotions of the scene. Compare Krillin's death scene in Legacy of Goku 1 to this here. You're too late to help him. And we start the game on a tragic death. This is awesome. Legacy of Goku 2 was able to make a Super Saiyan transformation hit harder with 1 minute of build-up than Legacy of Goku 1 was able to do with the entire game. Same ingredients, better pizza, Legacy of Goku 2. Now, it still contains many of the elements that I and others complain about with the first game. Fighting snakes and wolves is still lame, and the thought of any of our main characters being mauled to death by a wild warthog or a walking tiger man is still hysterical. Legacy of Goku 2, however, manages to place its filler in spots that make more sense in regards to the story. Yeah, well, it's true that one of the first things you're required to do is go on a Zelda Link's Awakening trading sequence to get Hercule to move his fat ass out of the way. At this point in the story of Dragon Ball Z, we know that 2 androids will appear on Earth in 3 years with apocalyptic results. Your mission is to train for that day. So, rescuing kids, beating up dinosaurs, retrieving a stolen key to the city, these filler quests could easily be written off as training exercises. In fact, as the trilogy wears on, it does better and better integrating original concepts and quest lines into the source material. If one were not familiar with DBZ, in Buu's Fury, I'd predict that it would actually be kind of hard to spot what's actually from the show and what isn't. Like, you got this sick little ninja stronghold in the forest. I think this enemy is supposed to be a reference to Muscle Tower in the original show. Look at how sick this is. I can imagine Gotenks storming a little ninja castle being a one-off episode in the show. I'd buy that. There's this sick part with a thieves' village. You put on a bandana and they think you're one of them. Then a monkey steals the bandana and everybody, it's like your disguise is taken off, but it's like your sprite didn't even change. This is filler content done right. All the late game Dragon Ball collecting was completely made up, but it's so well done that I can't even begin to complain. And that's a testament. Both Legacy of Goku 2 and Buu's Fury cover the main events of the show well enough that it could serve as a guide to it. Remember the early 2000s when you couldn't just watch every episode in order whenever you wanted? I was just a kid then and would only get the chance to watch random episodes whenever they happened to be on. I loved Dragon Ball, but it wasn't until I was an adult that I was able to piece together most of the overarching story. Having an RPG series to retell the events of the show was much more useful in 2002 than it would be today. To contrast, 1 has the highest filler to material actually from the show ratio. Then when it finally gets around to canon events, it misrepresents and leaves out key details. Legacy of Goku 1, in addition to playing like shit, also is a poor representation of Dragon Ball Z. For instance, in order to fight Frieza, final boss of the game, you need to go into this regeneration chamber for no reason, really. In the context of the game, anyway. In the show, it's because Goku is nearly dead from battling the Ginyu Force. Here, it just comes off as Goku taking a nap, leaving Vegeta, Gohan, Piccolo, and Krillin to just fend for themselves against Frieza, I guess. The first game is also hampered by only showing the events from Goku's perspective. But so much of the story of Dragon Ball Z unfolds outside of his purview. We don't see anything that happens on Earth while he's training with King Kai, or before he gets to Namek, or, well, recovering in that rejuvenation chamber. However, Legacy of Goku 2 makes the bold decision to withhold control of Goku until over halfway through the game. The man's name is in the title, yet he is the last one you get, unless you count Hercule. And the story is so much better off for it. Buu's Fury is the least distinct title, mostly because it's simply more of Legacy of Goku 2. If you like LOG 2, you will like Buu's Fury. It's the same game, it just looks slightly better, and they added a block button, an equipment system, plus shops and money, which sounds like more than it is. And none of these really add much to the overall experience. They felt like they were just kind of slapped on for the sake of it instead of being well thought out mechanics. The change that does end up actually mattering, though, is that you manually spend the skill points you gain by leveling up. Before, you just randomly, or maybe it's fixed, I'm actually not sure. Anyway, you had no control over how the character's stats changed upon leveling. Buu's Fury puts that control directly into the player's hands. Want to make Vegeta nothing but brute strength? Want to make Gohan a key wizard? Vice versa? Well, now you can. And you want to know what I think about Boo's Fury overall? Want to know my scorching hot, pouring McDonald's coffee on myself to cool off? That's how hot it is. Get ready to unsubscribe. Get ready to cancel me on Twitter. Haul me away in handcuffs. Throw away the key. I think Boo's Fury is way too easy. If I were to rate the trilogy's difficulty level on a scale of 1 to 10, the original would be a 6. The next one would be a 5. But Boo's Fury would have to get a 2. Maybe a 3? All these added mechanics, healing items you can buy, equipment just existing, custom stat builds, they all feel like they were plopped on top of a framework that was perfectly balanced without them. You also level up much faster, with some areas giving me a level on every single kill. At least until I caught up, I guess, to where they thought I would be. But it's not like I'm going into any areas underpowered anyway. And speaking of level, Boo's Fury starts out with Goku all the way at level 60, which is awesome. I love when games do that. If I'm supposed to be this battle-hardened warrior, then why do so many games start us off at level 1? Webfoot Technologies. These games' developers. Well, this trilogy turned out to be their magnum opus. Don't look up the other games these people made, it will just make you sad. They were a shovelware studio. Nothing but low-budget, licensed trash, which, by all accounts, is what this trilogy should have been. And in some respects, they still are. Even the good games. This studio had exactly one chance, at one specific moment in time, to create something special. So they stepped up to the plate, they swung, and they completely fucking missed. They absolutely wholly fucked it up. Made a complete train wreck of a game. But because this was the early 2000s, and because Dragon Ball Z was the hottest property, because they were in the right place at the perfect time, it sold millions, so they got another crack at it. So they stepped up to the plate again, and they hit a home run. 2 of them, in fact. Knocked it out of the park. I salute you, former employees of Webfoot, and I hope everyone has moved on to bigger and better things. Before I'm done, there's something that I absolutely need to talk about. Since the release of Legacy of Goku 2, there have been venomous debates online and in person, and all over the world, wars have been fought over less. West City Electronics Store, on the table, there are 6 clearly outlined Super Nintendo games, but they're so small that it's left it open to interpretation what a bunch of these are. The way I see it, there are 3 inarguable, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's what these are. Final Fantasy II is obviously the game in the top left. Secret of Mana, middle right, and Super Metroid in the bottom right. These are inarguable. I will hear no others. 100% perfect match. But the other 3, it's up to interpretation, and lots of people have presented lots of different theories over the years. Let's start with the one on the middle left. At first, my gut instinct told me that this was Shadowrun, but a more credible theory that more people believe is that this is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. You've got a gold background, silver for the shield, red text. But if this is a Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, I'm not really sure what the orange or the yellow square are supposed to be. You'll also notice this yellow square on Secret of Mana and whatever the game in the top right is. So perhaps they just weren't working off of a reference image, they were just doing it from memory, and they thought that there was a yellow square in the right side of the box art when there isn't. But I'd say A Link to the Past, probably the best match, more so than Shadowrun anyway. Then you have the bottom right, which at first I thought it might be Pilot Wings, but after looking that up, it's not really a very good match. And I don't think it is because the Pilot Wings text is slanted upwards and not downwards like it would have to be in this. And also, what's this blue figure on the left side? If you go to the crossover wiki, it claims that this is supposed to be Super Mario Kart, which I'm sorry, no, absolutely not. This is not Super Mario Kart. That doesn't match even a little bit. But a few months ago, another theory was brought to my attention. While Kyle Bossman, if you don't know who Kyle Bossman is, he's a YouTuber, he also does Twitch streams. So while he was streaming this game, naturally, as everyone does while they're playing this, they try to figure out what the games are on the table, and somebody in the chat suggested that this is Chrono Trigger, which is something that I had never considered before, but think about it, it works. Hecarim is the wrong shade of blue on the left, but if you tone down these pixels to a darker shade of blue, it almost fits perfectly. You've got this little red dot here from Chrono, you've got these orange bars for the magic, It's got a white background like the snowscape. Yeah, I think I buy it. This, I think, is Chrono Trigger, which leaves only the top right as the last mystery game. The Kyle Bossman stream was not able to figure this out. The crossover wiki claims that this is Yoshi's Island, which again, no, not even close. Now, my gut instinct was to say that this is Evo, the Search for Eden. It would fit with the adventure game slash RPG theme for the rest of them, and I remembered it having a similar bluish hint to the background, but looking it up, it's not really a very good fit. Other people I've seen suggest Earthbound, but again, no, not even close. Maybe Final Fantasy Mystic Quest? It is a blue background. The text would be in about the same spot at the same color. But what is that green supposed to be? That's certainly not the guy lifting up the sword. The Illusion of Gaia? No. That doesn't really fit either. Lufia? No. Breath of Fire? No. Mega Man X? That is a blue background. But again, no, not really a match. Sequest DSV? Yellow text? There's not really any green though. Like, what is this green? That's what's really throwing me off. Also, it dips down with one white pixel right here, which Secret of Mana also has, but isn't present in the actual box art. I wonder what they meant by this one white pixel right here. What is that supposed to signify? I thought maybe that might have been something on Squaresoft's box arts at the time, so maybe I'll just limit my search to Squaresoft games? Maybe it's supposed to be Japanese box art, but all the Square Japanese box arts were all white backgrounds with just plain logos and character art on them, so somehow I doubt it. I think this might be maybe Paladin's Quest might be my best guess. Text is same color, same spot, but again, that's still not really a great match. There's no yellow square. Saying that this green represents the city is kind of a big stretch as well. Now you might be thinking maybe the stripe at the bottom is a clue, but Super Nintendo games always came out with the red Super Nintendo text first, and then later they'd sometimes get re-released with yellow text, such as this Link to the Past here. So maybe this game was part of Nintendo's Player's Choice series? I'm mainly just looking for gold text high on the box art with some sort of green figure behind it, but I can't. I'm scrolling through all the Super Nintendo box arts and I don't see anything like that. But it doesn't make any sense that all of these would be references to Super Nintendo games, with just one not being. My theory is that the artist was working maybe without reference images, and they were just doing these from memory. So whatever this was meant to be, they just did a very poor job of representing what it actually was supposed to look like. But I'm gonna say that this is Paladin's Quest, but they didn't remember the box art very well. That's my final answer. That's what I'm locking in for this last mystery game. So I'm gonna say, left side, Final Fantasy II, Zelda Link to the Past, Chrono Trigger. Right side, Paladin's Quest, Secret of Mana, Super Metroid. Those are my final answers. That's what I think the box arts are. Never trust anyone who needs a haircut. Goodbye.